Welcome to the RPG Rundown. I'm Seth.
And I'm Jeff from Dungeons to Deep Space. We got the systems, we got the systems and the stories for your table. We also just changed up the intro, and that was our first take at it.
That's okay.
Hope you enjoyed it. But hey,
Absolutely.
welcome. Welcome to episode 5. We're gonna dive into the vast world of world building. You ever wondered where to start? Got questions about history or cultures or maps? We've got you covered. Having crafted unique worlds for our own games, today's discussion is going to be diving into the art of constructing an enjoyable and expansive TTRPG world. So join us as we explore the essentials and share tips about crafting your very own tabletop realm. And I will say, it's one of my favorite things about being a DM is just building out this amazing world to watch your players go in, explore, and destroy, honestly. Before we
Absolutely.
dive Absolutely. But before we dive too far into that, Seth, I know you have some news for us. What do we got going on in the great world of TTRPGs?
Yeah, speaking of fantastic realms. I mean, you know, I don't know if I was talking to you, but at one point I was talking to somebody about pre like modules, like adventure modules and stuff. And somebody was saying, "Oh, I don't like to use adventure modules because,
Mm.
it's just it's just so I like to build my own." And yeah, I totally get that. I love doing it myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
It's probably me.
but adventure modules are just someone else's homebrew,
Hmm. Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
So it's completely fine. And taking elements from those adventure modules is something we'll get into later. But speaking of two really cool and interesting worlds, we do have a little bit of news that we want to highlight. We're not the be all end all on news for tabletop RPGs. This is really stuff that
Yeah.
we find interesting and that we want to bring to the attention of you guys because we think that they're going to be awesome and we're excited for them. So,
Oh, yeah.
first, uh, if you've heard of the tabletop RPG called Tales from the Loop, it's one that I have ran before. It's one that I backed on Kickstarter, and it's from Free League Publishing, which is a Swedish company. They actually are the ones who did Dragonbane that we
Yeah.
did
Dragon Man was
our
excellent.
review on. Fantastic. But before they did not before they did Dragonbane originally, but before this new release of Dragonbane, I found them from Tales from the Loop because I found the really cool alternate universe 80s sci-fi artwork.
That's all.
It was just so cool by this guy named Simon Stalenhag. And it's fantastic. Love his art style. I've all somewhat compared it to like alternate 80s Norman Rockwell as a
Nice.
style.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would like that or not, but that's what I like to describe it as. So, but they so he has written so basically Simon Stalenhag will come out with a book. Like he came out with Tales from the Loop. And what it is usually is an art book with, I don't know, 50, 100, 200 pieces of art in this theme. Tales from the Loop was the first one. And then he had a couple follow ups to it. And then, but he kind of writes like a narrative story of the world as he sees it from the art.
Mm.
And so
Okay.
it's really cool. It's a cool coffee table book with kind of like a really cool story in it. And it's almost like each picture has a caption that's, maybe a couple paragraphs. So he has another book called The Electric State, and Free League Publishing maybe last week or so announced that the Kickstarter for The Electric State RPG is coming on December 5th. So that's
Mm.
the
Okay.
news. That's part of the news around it. I'm super excited about it
Yeah.
because I love, again, his art style and the stuff that he comes up with. But in learning about this, I also learned that that they're making so another thing too. Tales from the Loop. There was an Amazon Prime series about it. Don't know if
Mm.
you watched it. I don't even know if I finished it honestly, but it was
So I feel
pretty
like you
cool.
told me about it, but I don't think I've watched it yet.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, but I don't know if they followed everything exactly. Um, but they're coming out with a movie for the Electric State that is being done by the Russo brothers. So in-game, Marvel's in-game,
Mm-hmm.
and it is going to have big name actors in it, specifically Millie Bobby Brown of Stranger Things and other awesome shows and movies, and Chris Pratt.
Yeah,
So,
Star-Lord himself. Like
Star-Lord himself.
I need no more information.
Yeah, so, but apparently they started filming in October of 21 or 22 and went through February. Basically, filming is done, and it's supposed to be coming out in 2024.
Nice. So, okay. So the Electric State, that you had said that one's based in the 90s, right? Tales from the Loop
so it's based
80s?
in like Tales from the Loop was the 80s. Electric State is 1997, I believe specifically.
Okay, nice.
I actually have the art book,
nice.
which is pretty awesome, and it's just chocked full of amazing artwork.
Oh man, yeah.
It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but yeah, I actually scored this hardcover book from a library book sale for like $2. So
nice.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
So okay, let me ask, as someone who knows absolutely nothing about this whole genre here, does the book tell one consistent story? Like you read one page, page 1, page 2, page 3? Okay.
The book tells one consistent story. No, I don't want that one.
Awesome. Okay.
So it's kind of hard to see. Maybe you can see it.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, I can.
So that girl and the robot, that's what the movie's going to be about.
Oh, okay, very cool.
So Millie Bobby Brown is going to be the, I don't know if, I don't think he's going to be the robot. I think there's like an adult like detective or something that is like
that makes more sense.
Kind of following along with the story. So, but anyway, that's coming. I'm excited about it. Second bit of news. If you were familiar with Brandon Sanderson, he is a fantasy author. He has written some amazing books called the Stormlight Archive, as well as a whole bunch more. He's also, when the original author of Wheel of Time passed away, he actually took over those books as well. And so he's already written 4 or 5 of those books as well. Okay. But the Stormlight Archive is his original work, an original, like, super unique fantasy setting.
Yeah, very unique, yeah.
I've listened to all of those books. Jeff has got about 10 hours left of the first one.
Yeah.
So we were actually talking about it earlier.
Yeah, we were actually about 12 minutes late from starting the stream for the podcast because we were talking about the Stormlight Archives.
Yes.
And 10 hours left, it sounds like a lot, but keep in mind, it's a 50-hour book. And so I'm 40 hours in right now, and it is incredible. I cannot wait for this game.
So
this
good.
is going to be awesome.
It's so good.
I'm really hoping they come out with a movie, too. That would be amazing.
I'm tempted to buy the board game that has already come out for it just to get the minis. Just to get the minis.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Yeah. I think they're going to come out with more minis, though, honestly. I think
I guarantee. And if they don't, the 3D printer guys will.
Yep.
So there'll be Patreons and stuff for them, I'm sure. All right, well, let's, with that in mind, I've got, just because, I've got to ask at this point, if they were to make a movie, Electric State's got a movie coming.
Sure.
Who do you think would play Kaladin?
Man,
Who do you see as Kaladin?
So, he has to be tall.
Yeah, it has to be tall.
Dark hair.
Okay.
Because,
I would young. Say, I mean, Kaladin is young in the books.
In his 20s for sure.
Yeah. At least in the first book, I know he's 19 because he mentions that specifically.
All the books, they don't span a huge gap of time. I mean, it's. So yeah, I mean, he's got to be young, but not terribly young. So like I said, I think probably early 20s. But he's got to be tall. He's got to be super athletic. And if you know the story, you know why, because he's like doing some heavy manual labor for most of the first book. but yeah, tall, dark, like, super dark hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, you wouldn't have to have blue eyes or brown eyes. Like, they could use contact lenses for either
Yeah,
one.
they could fix that.
Regardless.
Yeah, I definitely put you on the spot. I don't have anyone in mind either.
I'm just trying to think, like, current actors who would have this kind of like rugged, serious. Man, I'm not as up on my young actors.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking either.
Think,
like, I'm like, oh, I don't know.
I was trying to think of maybe Goose's son from Top Gun.
Okay, yeah.
You would have to make him.
I can't remember
plays
Rooster. Name.
He would have to have like, they would have to make his hair really dark because his hair is pretty light brown. But they could make his hair dark.
Do that.
And I think he could pull it off. Like, be really serious.
I can see that.
Kind of moody, because he kind of plays that in Maverick.
True.
But honestly, it's important that Kaladin is like kind of tall and imposing. He's got a presence about him. So
yeah,
Dalinar Kholin could be. Oh man, that could be really cool too. Like, because I don't feel like he has to be tall. He just has to have. No. I feel like he needs to be a little thicker.
Yeah. He needs to have a solid build.
Absolutely. I would have said like a John Rhys Davies could have been, like a young John Rhys Davies could have been Dalinar Kholin.
Okay.
I don't know.
This feels like it could be an episode all its own.
It could
I don't know if it's our genre, but it could be cool.
No, real quick. I mean, all I can think of is Maverick now. But like, you could totally pick the other guy. The guy who smiles all the time. He could totally be Adolin Kholin for that matter.
Oh, Adolin. Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know. I'd have to think more on it. I'm sure there's better. But
all right, anyone on the YouTube side of this, leave it in the comments. What should the cast, if you've read the Stormlight?
And like, this is like barely. We haven't talked about the news part of it yet. But we're just fantastic book series.
Absolutely.
Go read or listen to the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. But the news, we've known for a little bit that there is a Stormlight tabletop RPG coming out. However, we also know that Brotherwise Games is going to be the publisher. Funny enough, so if any of you know me, I am a huge fan of BattleTech and the BattleTech universe, which also include MechWarrior video games and stuff like that. BattleTech had a massive Kickstarter where they raised $7.5 million, and then probably doubled that after the Kickstarter. Oh. But there has been videos over the last 6 months from their distributors in China who are fulfilling the Kickstarter. And it's kind of cool little like 2-minute videos, and they're clips of like things being assembled in China. Well, the same plastics manufacturer who are making the minis for BattleTech are actually making the minis for the Stormlight RPG and for Stormlight Archive, like board games and stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll post videos for that, and that's also really cool. It's a little crossover there. But the Kickstarter, or the Stormlight RPG, is supposed to launch in 2024. We know that. But a week ago, or within the last week, they announced the creative team for this Kickstarter, and it included Andrew Fisher, who was formerly of Fantasy Flight Games, who worked on the Genesis Star Wars RPG. I'm a big fan of that setting and system, so that's really exciting for me. Some of the other people on the Stormlight team are other Fantasy Flight veterans who worked on like the Legend of the Five Rings RPG. Anyway, we're expected to hear more at Dragon Steel Con November 20th and 21st. So hopefully we'll get a lot more details then. So those are kind of the two big news items. We could talk forever about this Stormlight series or about other stuff, but let's really quickly just give you guys a reminder of what system we're going to be testing for this month
Mhm.
in our review episode and what it's going to be about. Jeff, why don't you
So
tell us about that?
coming on up, our very next episode of this should be a review of what we test played, and we will be test playing DC 20. And if you're not following, it's put out by Dungeon Coach. He has a YouTube channel, The Dungeon Coach. I don't know. We've got it. I've been studying it. I'm going to get to DM it, and I am so. Put it this way: like I legitimately think after I finish this campaign that I'm in right now in 5e, DC 20 might be what I move my next campaign into. And I don't know. I haven't test played it, so that could change. But at least just reading through the rules and the way that I don't know some of the stuff's laid out, I'm really optimistic about how it's going to play.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's something that I am also kind of like, could it be, my next campaign? At the same time, I'm also super excited about Dragonbane, and I'm even more excited about Tales of the Valiant and Daggerheart.
Daggerheart is another one. That's like Daggerheart and DC 20 were like at the same level for me.
Yes.
And then, of course, Matt Colville's system, but I haven't heard a lot about that, so I don't know where he's at on it.
My excitement for his has cooled a little bit in light of...
Yes, I agree.
The Tales of the Valiant is 5e, so I could also see myself just, honestly, before this campaign even ends, kind of saying, oh, we've transitioned to Tales of the Valiant for the 5e system. So rather than using Wizards of the Coast 5e, we're using Kobold Press's 5e, which is Tales of the Valiant. So... because honestly, like, I could
not
see
enough would change for you to have to call it a different.
Right.
It's not that you'd have to do anything with your players or anything to make it a different system.
For the most part, I've been saying, we're just playing in the 5e system. I've kind of stopped even saying D&D or Wizards. So, but we'll see.
I like it.
So yeah, super excited about that. I'm gonna get to play. I always love when I get an opportunity to play instead of DM. So yeah, but that will be coming soon. Also, to coincide with that next review episode, we will have another review play session up on our actual play YouTube channel. So that'll be up. Look for that as well. It'll be about the same time.
We call that the rap channel, which is rundown one shots. Wouldn't know rundown actual play? I was like, that doesn't spell rap.
That doesn't spell rap.
Yeah. Rundown actual plays. So make sure you're subbed to that channel as well on YouTube, and there you can actually watch the live play session, which is going to be very much an actual play. There will be questions. There will be reading rules about things. There will be clarifications, and it'll be fun. Yeah.
Part of the review process is also understanding how easy it is for DM and players to understand and run.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. I agree. With that said, we are like 18 minutes in. I guess we should start on the subject at hand of world building.
Plenty of time. That's plenty of time.
Plenty of time to talk about world building. Absolutely. Oh man, we could talk forever about it because I know that Seth and I, we've gotten in our own personal conversations about our own worlds, and they can go for lengthy amounts of time. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Seth the first question, and I'll kind of play off that as well. But I think where if you're here and you've never built your own world, maybe if you have, there's still value in this question, but you've decided to build your own world, where do you start? Like, where do you get your inspiration? What do you start with? So, Seth, in your own world that you just built, where did you start?
Absolutely an important question. So, for me and the world of Zenelia, which is where we're currently adventuring in our Hearth and Hammer campaign. And also this is, kind of for me and in my method in general is I will have a concept for a world. Maybe I've been, we'll talk about some of the follow-up questions, like the bullet points that we have in our outline for this. But I'll just say, for me, I will start with a concept or a theme, and then I will, rather than try to build the entire thing out all at once, maybe I'll do a world map, but a very broad, blank world map, just to set up what I think the world could look like. And maybe I don't even do that. Maybe I have a few other abstract thoughts about like, well, he needs to have multiple nations, and where is the conflict going to happen? Like, or, where is there major tension? Like if there's a war going on, where is there minor tension? Maybe I'll think of some of those concepts, but ultimately, once I kind of have, the very, very high overview of what I want the world to be, whether it's like, high traditional fantasy or, low magic or whatever. So like I said, theme first, maybe, but then as far as building it out, I kind of start with something small. So like, where are my characters going to start? What's my adventure hook? What's my initial excitement that I want to have this world start with? And, that, so it could be in a town or centered around an event, or something like that. And so then I will start to build out, that town or that setting, or, for the current one, it's kind of happening at like a festival is where it starts off.
Right.
And it's a festival where a whole bunch of different nations come together. They're celebrating the harvest. And part of that is that there's competitions. And part of that competitions is what leads the player group on their initial quests, because they're part of this competition and they are given some tasks to perform. And so that's kind of where I started. And so then I built out, where are they in the world? So like I said, that's having now the world map. Okay, I need multiple, nations. I want a couple big bodies of water and stuff like that. And as far as creating a map, this kind of jumps down, but you can
like you said, skipping questions.
You can go generate something,
Absolutely, yeah.
Anywhere. I've also seen methods where people will take like rice and they'll drop
I've seen
it
this, yes,
on paper. Okay, they'll take like a big sheet of paper or poster board. They'll take some rice and drop it, and then they'll outline the bigger sections of rice to make the continents, and then the little ones to make islands. That seems very detailed, but I do like that. That's cool. Cool kind of random.
Funny, I've actually
seen
people do the same thing in Photoshop. You can use a cloud filter, and it creates like a randomly generated cloud, and then you like do your contrast and stuff, and then you get this black shapes. And but yeah, I mean, it actually comes out with some very unique looking maps.
Oh,
like
absolutely. There's also,
I did not do that. But that's very cool.
There's also free and paid software and web-based stuff out there, like Incarnate or World Anvil, some others like that, and you can literally just go and like generate random world maps, and you can just
I'm just going to throw this
random and random until it like shows you a different situation of bodies of water and land masses and stuff like that. But again, so having the small part and just knowing where it is, if you have a somewhat blank world map, like just a shape, you don't have to have mountains, you don't have to have rivers or boundary lines, just a shape, and you say, you know what, I'm going to take this small section, the small town, the small event, I'm going to put it right here. And then you can just kind of start going out from there and saying, well, I want there to be mountains nearby, so we'll put them in the north. I want there to be a river and a forest, maybe over here. Or I want it to be in a big metropolis, a big town. So, like I said, I kind of start with a big theme and then start small and go outwards.
I was gonna say, you also kind of hit on something very important that I think I see a lot of people kind of get, in my opinion, wrong. And that's, you don't have to have your entire world completed to start playing in it.
Oh, no.
Absolutely right? Like,
not.
I mean, multiple cities that are very important in my world's lore now were created to suit a party in a certain adventure. And now, lore has been built upon that, and it's all fitted and worked in. But even right now, we've been playing in my world for about a year, maybe over a year now, and it's not done. Things are still being added. Cities are being built. Lore is created. Your world doesn't have to be completed. Like Seth's saying, you could have your map, and you could say, hey, this campaign I'm running, I'm about to start right here. They need to be next to a big city. Oh, we're going to create a small town right here because it's in the right proximity to this city where something's going to happen, and There you go. Your world does not have to be completed to start playing in it.
Absolutely. And it's not going to be, honestly. I mean,
Oh,
that's
it's not. No,
part of
it's
the
yeah.
fun is that
Hmm.
you create things along the way that are
Yeah.
part of the story. Now, you
Well, I let my
can,
players create things too. Like some
oh,
of my players, they're
100%.
like, "I want to create a character. Do you have this in your world?" And I'm like, "Not yet. What's your idea?" And
Yeah.
then we can go with it.
No, and that's fantastic. I mean, as you know, for Xanilia, that's I definitely started with kind of what I described earlier, but I also had been thinking on my world for a while.
Hmm.
So I had said, okay, I want this element that I took, and this is going to go into the bullet points under question 1 here. I had inspirations. I had some books, some older fantasy genre books that novels that I loved, and they still are like there's nothing. They're still just old books. Like there's no TV shows, there's no video games, there's nothing connecting them. Even though the author is super well known
Yeah.
and has written books for BattleTech and Star Wars and World of Warcraft and others, kind of thing.
Hmm.
But he had some original works. He actually had 2 different series of works, and I loved some of the elements from him. And so I was like, I kind of like that idea. I kind of like this twist that he used. It was kind of he had a unique fantasy setting. So there were some unique races, and there's some unique ways magic were used and stuff like that. And so I took some inspiration from that. And that's
Right.
another bullet point here. You can take inspiration from any of the media you consume: TV,
Mm.
books, movie, video games, whatever.
Right.
Try not to directly copy it.
Right.
Maybe don't
That's right.
call
That's
it the
very
same. Try to
yeah.
change something about it. Try to find a twist and make it your own.
Mhm.
Something like that. And that's absolutely fine. And especially for your own world, if this is just for you and your friends and your enjoyment, then
Yeah.
no limits. You can
All
you could
means.
you could totally use
Right.
the same names and stuff like that.
Yeah. And honestly, like if you and your friends are into the same stuff and you're not creating content, you're not selling this, your
Exactly.
players might get a kick out of visiting Tatooine. Like,
Sure.
like if you're bringing in some Star Wars stuff, like, stuff like that, I think is perfectly fine. Now, if you're
Absolutely.
selling it or making content on it online, maybe, steer clear of that. But for your own
Yeah.
personal games, I could see
Um,
a lot of fun being had in that.
Absolutely. And again, as far as inspiration, like what's a fun, famous trope? Like for you, like
Yeah.
what is a trope that you like to incorporate, whether as part of an intro adventure or, you know,
Mm,
for a big bad guy or something, or for a town?
right.
Like what's one of
Yeah.
those that you like?
Yeah. So, famous tropes. Yeah. I always go with some sort of standoff. Like, okay, so I should start off with my world real quick. So my world of Maradonia, like my starting concept for Maradonia, like I am I guess sort of inspired by books as well. I grew up reading a lot of Lewis Lamar. And so if you're into the Western genre at all, Lewis Lamar is a
Mm.
very famous Western author. And I grew up watching Westerns with my grandpa, always wanted to be a cowboy. And yeah, I'm from Tennessee, y'all, okay? And so I always wanted to be a cowboy. And so the idea, like just the basic concept of Maradonia is the idea of the early American frontier, like the lawlessness, the everyone's
Nice.
kind of out for themselves, trying to score the gold and get rich, train robberies and all that, mixed with high fantasy D&D. Like, what if there's magic during that time? Now, I took out the Western tropes of like the cowboy hats and the sheriffs and the horses and even the trains. Like in my world, the main course of travel is man-made rivers, and so there are boats, and so boats almost operate like trains or passageways
Oh,
in
sure.
my world. And so you have sort of like train robberies, but it looks a lot more like pirating, and so some mixture of stuff
Sounds
happening like
great.
that. Yeah, and so like I love like the standoff trope and things like that that kind of reach in and kind of just give hints of that like Western vibe, because the Maradonia is kind of intended to be that Wild West feel. Like every location you go to is going to look different. You have some that operate like kingdoms. You have some that operate like a modern city, like a democracy. You're going to have some places that are a complete anarchy and there's a gang ruling it because there's no high governing force in Maradonia. And so everywhere you go, you're going to get something a little bit different. Because they kind of operate as almost like city states at this point, and there's no like official country or nation or anything like that. That's kind of the ongoing war is a force, and so in my world also there's no deities. That's also going to affect a lot of your world building. If you have deities, who they are, what they do, how they influence things. Deities in my world kind of operate like schools of thought. So the main bad guys, if you will, is the Asmodeans, which follow the mindset and the teachings of Asmodeus or Asmodeus. I've heard people say it in multiple different ways. I don't know what the correct way to actually say it is. And so it kind of follows that teaching. But I know you asked about trope, but that's kind of like I like the standoff. I like to pull in any kind of like just there's hints at that like Western trope with like
Oh yeah.
train robberies as like boat robberies and bank heists and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And, like even just describing that, there's so many things that you could consider a trope. Tropes are not bad things, especially
They're not
when
bad.
you're
No,
creating a world, because they're basically a formula for something that we like as humans, things that
Yeah.
we connect with. And so yeah, that's absolutely it. I mean, like, for my intro adventure, it's very much a young or a kind of random group of competitors thrown together who all of a sudden are thrust into matters that are more important. How often is that? I mean, it's in like a whole bunch of movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, you've got little hobbits that are like, oh, well, yeah, all we got to do is take this ring to Rivendell. Well, now we need to travel to Mount Doom, like, or
Yeah.
oh, I just found a ring, and it's the most important ring, again,
Right.
like someone innocent, young, whatever, being thrown into great, and mighty adventure. It's a fun trope. So.
Oh, absolutely.
But 100% theme, like we said, we kind of mentioned this, but like, have a theme. Do you want high fantasy? Do you want Wild West? And these can all be mixed too.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I was like, that's the whole like the idea of theme. Like, and it doesn't have to be one thing.
Yeah.
Like you could have high fantasy, and then you could have sci-fi if they leave the world. You kind of seen that happen with my brain just blanked on the word, but Wizards put out the sci-fi side of things.
Yes,
yeah, that one.
Yes.
Someone will know what I'm talking about. And so you could absolutely do that in your own world. You could have, okay, right here's high fantasy, and then like your guys enter this portal, and now your world has this whole other expansive side that's sci-fi. And it's your world, it's your imagination. Like
Absolutely.
I mean, think also what's gonna be fun for your players. Your players might have signed up for a high fantasy game and then fell into a portal, and all of a sudden it's sci-fi. They may not be into that, and so.
Yes, definitely communicate with your players. That's
yes,
important.
absolutely. That's important too in world building. Make sure your players know what. So I have a written Google Doc that I send about Maradonia, and usually it has some history, like what the characters would know, and also just a theme of what the world is like. And of course, I have a session 0 where I have a whole bunch of stuff I go through. Even my players that have played before, they go through the session 0, so we're all on the same page.
Absolutely.
And usually
a player's
I talk about
guide
the
is very handy in a session 0. So. Especially when you're homebrewing, because it's not like they can just say, oh, I've watched Critical Role. I know what the world of Critical Role looks like. Or I've, read Forgotten Realms, or I've read Dragonlance, or whatever. It's not something that they can already have a familiarity with the characters and setting, because it's something you've created. So.
Absolutely. And so same thing with like their races that they chose too. Like are orcs the same in your world as they are in D&D? Like are they the same? Like, so that's other things you kind of have to think about. For me, most of the time the answer is yes. That I haven't written huge backstories about different races or anything, so yes. Whatever it is in D&D is probably what it is in Maradonia.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. What are essential components to get started with a world building in a TTRPG for you? Like, give me 3 important components.
Okay, so important components. I think I'm gonna go like I think real high level.
Sure.
At this point, if I'm gonna name 3, I think you need to know um, your main conflict in the world. And I think that there should be, even if it's like your level 1 characters obviously have nothing going on with the main conflict. If there's a war going on in your world, your level 1 characters would know about it. And so if there's some sort of conflict going on that needs to be out there, and maybe that's a little too drawn in. Your world probably needs to have a setting, like we were talking about, whether that is fantasy, that is sci-fi, that is like it needs to have somewhat of a setting that is kind of tacked down, and then I think your world needs moving parts. I don't know. Maybe I went with 3 different levels there, like really high, medium, and low down. But it needs moving parts. Things need to change, right? That's one of the things that happen a lot in my cross-hamming games. Like there would be a quest board, and every time they go to the quest boards, sometimes the quest would change. Sometimes they'd be canceled because the person they were looking for was found dead because no one went and saved her, right? Like it is a moving, evolving world, and so there should be moving parts to your world as well, like things that are changing even when your players aren't interacting with them.
Absolutely.
Now, don't
like
spend 90% of your. Yeah, it feels like a living world. Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. Yeah, I think if I were to add 3 different ones, because I agree with I agree with those, but if I were to add 3, I would say have an interesting story hook, whether that's something you come up with on your own or you talk to your players. Like, what do what's the kind of story you want to do? Do you want to do a heist story? Do you want to do a hero's journey, Lord of the Rings-esque, adventure?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to do the kind of the Wild West again? So it kind of ties in with theme, but also just like what does it look like? So and then also I would say places. Have places.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about the map. It does not have to be full. It doesn't even have to have hardly anything on it. You can create it as you go. And then, characters. Like, create characters. One of the big things I would recommend as you prepare, and this is kind of a DM tip, not just a world building, but give yourself a list of names ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to have
if you're a
characters
person, have that
surrounding
taped
them.
inside your DM screen.
Yeah, you don't have to have them. You don't have to have characters created. Just have a list of names. Give yourself, if it's fantasy, give yourself some elven names and some dwarven names and maybe some goblin names or orc names or human names that sound fantasy-esque. Or if it's sci-fi, give yourself some alien names and some human names or whatever. And the only reason I say that is because your players will ask you, oh, well, I'm just going to find the random person on the street to give me directions.
Absolutely.
What's your name, friend? And then you're like, my name's Bob.
And
And
there
that's
can
not
only be so
always
many Bobs
fun.
in one world.
That's
okay?
always bad. Yeah. But just give yourself characters, okay? Like I said, they don't have
Oftentimes
to be
Bob will
fleshed
become
out.
their favorite character, just so you know.
Absolutely. Like a little
If you've been DMing for any length of time, you know that your players will make friends with the weirdest people.
A little kobold, prisoner becomes favorite character. So
Becomes favorite character, absolutely. I got to play that kobold actually at one point. That was fun.
that was a lot of fun, actually. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what about what about things to flesh out the world? Culture, towns, nations. Give me some of that.
Yeah. So I think this is where it's one of the things. Start with where your players are. Like especially like I mean, if you're building world to build a world, okay, now we're gonna flesh this thing out big. If you're building world to run a campaign, start where your players are. Okay, what city are they located in? Okay, what quest am I sending? What quest are we starting with? Like if it's sandbox, okay, now all right, then just build the city and let them explore and figure things out. But if you have like specific quests and stuff that you're thinking they're gonna go on and do, okay, what kind of city fits that? Okay, so now I have a massive city, 100,000 people are in this city, right? Okay, so this 100,000 person city, what's it governed by? Who runs this thing, right? A city that big has to have some rulers. Okay, those are the rulers. What about, the military? Is there a military system? And so I think from there you start to kind of build it out, or let's say they're starting in a small village that they've come to help, right? You're okay, now we're starting with a
Mhm.
village. They don't have a big democracy or a kingdom. They have a tribe leader
And there's a reason that they're the trope of
Mhm.
of a party starting in an inn or a tavern.
Yeah,
There's a reason it's so
absolutely.
popular. It's because it is something small that you as the
hmm
DM and the players can craft together. You've got the ruler, innkeeper, or tavern, owner. You've got other characters that are there. Maybe you have a bar fight, or maybe somebody from outside comes in and starts conflict, and it's something you can build out, you can flesh out, you can give details to, because even with a big city, you don't have to have all those immediately. Like,
Right.
you can say, oh, well, they're in this part of the city, and you'll give a few details about that. And then
Mhm.
maybe the next session, you move into another part of the city and you
Right.
flesh out that part of the city. Maybe it's 5 sessions before you get to the government or the governor,
Right.
somebody high up in
Absolutely.
charge. So, again, you don't even have to have things like that fully fleshed out.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, exactly. I like to start there and kind of build in. Usually that way, if you ever want to hint to the government, okay, they're at the tavern and the city guard walks in and you see as he walks in, the bartender opens up the thing, pulls out a coin pouch, throws it up there and pays the city taxes or whatever. If you
yeah.
want to leave some hints of what is coming or what's happening in the city. But yeah, as far as like building cultures, I think it's really trying to figure out what you want the feel of your games to be, sort of like if you're going with the Wild West, sci-fi, fantasy, like, and then kind of
Yeah.
build in from there.
And feel free to take
Yeah.
inspiration. Like,
Or I mean, build out from there. Like
right.
yeah, start in your tavern, and honestly, maybe after the opening tavern bar fight or quest calling, you might see a little more of what your characters are into. Okay, did they try to pickpocket 6 people, start 3 fights? Did they
Yeah.
just want to hang out, RP, and drink? Like that. Now you can start building out from there
Yeah.
as well.
But yeah, like I said, it's something that, do it as you go. If you're a
Oh,
detailed
absolutely.
person and you want to write a bunch of stuff down,
hmm
fantastic. Just be prepared to maybe change, and don't be so rigid on the things that you create,
Yes.
because you want to allow your players to be involved in that. And
Mhm.
if it's something where you're guiding every aspect of the cooperative storytelling, which is what TTRPGs are supposed to be,
Mhm.
it
Absolutely.
almost just becomes like them living in a novel that you
Yeah.
wrote. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Just
don't want
living
that.
in your story. And that's not the same
Okay,
thing.
we're getting close to time here, so here's a couple of quick questions. Any other ways that you could say to create a map? Maps are fun. We like maps,
Oh,
but like
yeah.
you can do maps of towns, maps of worlds, maps of cities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I will
what's
say this
one
too.
way that you like to build a map?
So I will say this is like I'm a graphic designer, but I'm not exactly a great map maker. Now, Seth here is an incarnate king.
Well, I don't
I
know about that, but
am
thank you.
Yeah, I am a find the ones that are clonable and edit them a little bit to fit what I need. And but so what I actually did with my world map, I created it and it was good and ugly, but it got across what I wanted. And then I hired an artist on Fiverr to remake it with their skill, and it came out incredible. And so I'm just gonna say, and
Nice.
honestly, the artists, like you can just send them a message and say, hey, this is what I want, and they'll fill it out. Like seriously, some of the artists are incredible. Fiverr has some crazy talent on there. And I had an artist build mine. I've had an artist do a few other things for me as well. But honestly, the map of Maradonia that I now use is like old school parchment style, kind of fits that Western vibe. I built the map, I built all the cities and stuff in it, but then I had an artist make it pretty, which is
Nice.
ironic because I
Nice.
am a graphic designer by trade. But still,
There's
map
a
making
difference
is a
between
different
art and
world.
design. So,
It's very true, very true. Map making is a
um,
different world.
absolutely. And he mentioned Incarnate. Incarnate is one.
Mhm.
They
Yes.
have several different versions. There are other places you can find online. If you
hmm
search for digital map making for TTRPGs, you're gonna find about 5 good tools. There's Dungeon Draft. There's Dungeon Scrawl, which is like black and white pencil drawings with a grid.
Yes.
It's awesome. So yeah, there's a bunch of different
cool
ones.
Vibe to it.
It does. I do like it.
Yeah.
So maps are fun, but you don't have to get too tied down to it. Okay. Yeah, I think we're gonna skip that last question, but
Okay. Fair
just
enough.
because that's
Fair
a
enough.
massive topic and we're pressed for time.
It is. It definitely is. I think it's something maybe to open up a whole episode on it.
Exactly.
You don't know what we're
But
talking about. You have to wait.
you have to wait, find out. But let's just leave it with this: if you are a DM or if you're a player, world building is not necessarily for you alone. It's for the entire party. It's something that is inherent to tabletop gaming. Even if you are in a pre-built setting, the first campaign that Jeff ever played started from an adventure module from Critical Role's official Wizards of the Coast book. But after that first couple sessions that were the introductory adventure, we went off on our own and we built our own little section of Exandria, which is the Critical Role world. So it doesn't have to be completely homebrew to be considered homebrew or to be building the world, if you will. But don't be what's the word? Don't be discouraged from attempting it, from attempting building a world.
No, it's
a lot of fun.
So enjoyable. It is so it really is.
So
yeah.
Last things here. I think we'll just kind of say, like for my own part, haven't had a whole lot of personal hobby games lately because I've been out of town for work. Without getting too much into the details of your campaign, have you been able to play at least recently?
So the Everlasting Unveiled, we actually have not played. Some scheduling conflict, but we did start up a interim campaign where I'm actually getting to be a player called The Black Rose, and Ian, who's one of the players in my campaign, is DMing it, and it's taking place in his world. And so it's really been really cool to play in his world and kind of see how it's opening up. But I'm getting to play a paladin for the first time, and that's really fun.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to the next month because we're going to get to play. We're going to get to play DC-20.
Yes.
We're going to get to play our own games and more. I'm super excited. Yes. So, also, it's the holiday season. Also, besides just moving into the holidays, which I love Thanksgiving and Christmas. We got a lot of good TTRPG stuff coming in the next 12 months.
So good. Yeah.
So, be sure to stick with us because we're going to have as much of it as we can within our limited scope, but we're excited. So, lastly, don't forget, we are partnered with Love Thy Nerd. Love Thy Nerd is a fantastic organization who are focused on bringing the love of Christ to nerds and nerd culture, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
Jeff and I are both Christians. We love Jesus and we love games, and so that's why we're here. We're happy to talk about both, and so always feel free to engage us in any way or place that you can. But a couple of those ways are for this podcast. You can find our socials in the show notes. Should be, well, shoot, now I've forgotten, but it should be. I think it's at RPG Rundown, or is it at the RPG Rundown?
I think it's at RPG Rundown.
It is, yes.
Yes.
As I'm looking it up. Yeah. No, it's
I'm looking it up too.
It's at the RPG Rundown on
I was
Twitter.
totally wrong. Look at
that. But check us out. Again, we'll have links to everything in the show notes. But please give us a like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you have. This will be released as part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. Super honored to be a part of that network. And we love everything they're doing over there. They just wrapped up a nerd culture summit
Ministry Summit. Yeah, dude.
Ministry Summit.
I did
And
not get to attend. Plan to next year. It looked
same,
amazing.
Same, but I'm super excited to
They watched
dive
some of it
into all
online,
the
though.
stuff they did. So, but again, thank you for joining us. We look forward to talking more RPG stuff with you later. And so, as we end here, from our table to yours, thanks for joining the RPG Rundown.
Until next time, may your roles be epic and your stories legendary.
See you next time.
See ya.